I think it's for me, it's a really great opportunity to meet people physically because we spend a lot of time virtually in the crypto space, and it's one of the great parts about it because we're so global at the end of the day. So it's a great op to get together with people to move things forward a little bit quicker. Yeah, as I said, as good as the virtual is, it's important to meet people every once in a while. I think it's a split narrative as far as I'm concerned. That there's a lot of movement around the institutional side and a lot of positivity, and then the retail side doesn't fit as closely to that. I don't want to say it's negative, or at least my personal opinion, but there seems to be a pretty big split right now between those two groupings of individuals. But in total, I'd say that there's a positive movement forward, surely also caused by the US administration that's come in now, that's saying a lot more positive things about crypto, wanting to go in a specific direction, even the Fed and so forth. So I think on the macro level, there's a lot of good things being said, and if you sit in some of the regulatory panels and so forth, you can see there's a movement forward, and that's a really good thing. Very valid point. There's so many tokens coming online every day that it really is. I think it's a good way of putting it. It is pretty saturated right now. I think it's about creating, as always in any market, a USP. And one of the points that we've been looking at very closely, and I think it's a general trend, is the RWA space. Because as opposed to the saturated piece where Pump.Fun are churning out tokens massively, and I don't want to say that's good or bad, the jury's out on that whole piece, but it's a lot of the same things. They're variations of the same things. So to your point about being saturated, I think there's a lot of space for different concepts, though. Again, looking at the RWA piece, I think we're pretty early on right now. There's some interesting commodities out there. There's real estate out there. So there's a lot of space to do a lot more things. And I think that's where one can look at is creating a different aspect and a different type of asset class inside of crypto where there isn't a lot of saturation, but a lot of potential. Well, okay, then I'll answer it first a bit from the crypto space, as opposed to us or myself personally. Is I think it's really important to watch that big macro narrative and not get too caught up in charts all the time. There's different ways of thinking about all these things, but these are big macro pieces. And I read something yesterday. I think there's 32 U.S. states right now that are bringing in or discussing, let's put it that way, legislation around Bitcoin reserves and whatnot. The Czech National Bank, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a big movement there, and needless to say, if a run does start on that, that's going to have a big impact on the space in total. So I think any way you look at it, that's a big piece. Then there's the typical cycles that we know from the past: Bitcoin followed by ETH, followed by altcoins, and so forth and so forth. Whether or not that's still valid or not, I think as well, there's a lot of different opinions there. But I think it is this very big macro space that we're in right now with such big movers coming in, really central banks and governments, that it's incredibly important to watch that. And the next 6 months, I think, are going to be very, very critical around that aspect to see, does it go through, does it not? El Salvador just made some interesting decisions about rolling back, which I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. They had a very, very interesting experience there. But nonetheless, there's a lot of moving pieces, and they're big moving pieces. So we're going to watch it.
In the last year, the narrative has been around AI.
Yeah.
How are you planning to integrate this as part of a product or as part of your product?
To be honest, not. And that's perhaps a bit of a shocking answer. I'm a fan that you've got to focus on things. If you try and be everything and you're always trying to chase something, I think AI is an absolutely amazing development. But for our token, at the end of the day, because we're an investment token, I don't think it has that relevance that it does for different areas. I mean, AI agents are incredible, what you're able to do with them. But if you're looking at a straight up investment token, which is what we are, and we don't want to be more than that, because again, a lot of things in life are about simplicity and being clear. So the very honest answer is AI isn't, maybe there's aspects of it that we can look at, and especially on the asset side, but as far as the actual token goes, I don't foresee at this point in time, but maybe I'm just not seeing it yet, that there's a hard use case for us. Having said that, AI is moving so quickly. If you ask me in 2 weeks, I might have a different answer.
Very good. There's a big wedge happening right now between stablecoins, altcoins, Bitcoin, and on the other side, meme coins.
Yeah.
How do you navigate this gap?
Well, I mean, it's here as well, I mean, you know yourself, there's so many different opinions about what is good or not good for the space. I mean, look at what Solana's done as far as their adoption has gone, the numbers that have come together, the scalability through this whole meme coin craze that's happened. So I think there's very, very positive aspects to it. On the other hand, and we don't have to go into examples, there's been some situations, I'll use the rug pull, you know, the term, where I think that's not good for the space because it doesn't do anything for the confidence in this being, you know, an asset class that is realistic, you know, can be trusted, et cetera, et cetera. So I think I'm a bit torn. I think with so many things, there's super aspects to it that are bringing us farther. And there's other aspects where you almost have to cringe sometimes to think to yourself, you know, it's not helping us. I belong to the school of thought as if I want to put $700 in something, and you know, and by the way, the likelihood that I lose all of it as opposed to making $1 million or 10 million, that's pretty clear too. I can spend $700 on buying lottery tickets and then see how that goes as well. And I don't want to say it's a pure lottery thing because you can, you know, there's logic to what's happening in the meme coin space as well. There's trends in there. So it's, you know, it's everybody's right to, I think at the end of the day, to put the money on the table. I would just advise everybody put money on the table that you can lose. Of course, the upside's great, but the downsides, you've got to be able to deal with that. So I have less of an issue with the people who make the money. It's more if there are bad actors involved in that space and then, you know, misuse the trust or perhaps the lack of knowledge that certain investors have in that space and then do that for their own personal well-being. So I've got less of the problem with the 700 to that side because that's all fair in love and war. I've got more of a problem if it's scam. And that's what hurts us as a space, is the scams out there. So for our specific token, is being an RWA, that's the first piece because, you know, there are not a lot of RWAs out there yet. It's coming, and by the way, I think personally it's the next logical step because of a lot of these things with meme coins and so forth. And I was just in Houston last week talking to a lot of individuals, and you hear that a lot, you know, that people are concerned about who haven't moved in yet because they say, how can it be that something can go from $700 to 10 million in 24 hours? That's just, something's got to be wrong there. So I think the fact that we're focusing on the RWA space is the right timing to do that. And I'll use the term entry token, and I think some people consider that to Bitcoin too. You know, again, there's the jury out. But I think that's a nice aspect that we have, that people who want to get into crypto, they don't really understand the crypto part of it, but they do understand the real asset side. And in our specific case with oil and gas backing, that's something that a lot of people resonate with because, you know, they fuel their cars, you know, your camera's made out of plastic for the greater part. So it's something that everybody gets, that oil and gas is a necessary element that's used for various things, and it's going to continue to be used for that. And the business model behind oil and gas is not a bad one either, because as we know, if you take the biggest market cap on the planet, once you take the big, you know, the big digital guys out of the game, they're more than often oil and gas. So I think it helps the risk profile of individuals who want to come into the space, get their feet wet, and that would be my advice, is don't go in with, you know, 10,000 first day, go in with a little amount, play on the market, understand how it works, have your experiences, you're going to lose some money, you're going to make some money, and then you can start to make educated decisions about what you're doing. And I think our token fits nicely into that space because, as I said, we've got, with a real world asset backing, we're something that people who haven't been in the space, I think, can understand a little bit easier than some of the more abstract concepts that are out there. Not that they're bad, but it's just, you know, you need time to understand it.